Hey class, happy Wednesday. So, coming to you guys virtually this time, so that way we can make sure we have all our notes and all the information I need to give you is up to date. So, if you haven't done so already, make sure you turn in your homework and anything else you want me to grade the rest of the week, just make sure it makes it back to the buckets. My TAs are really good at sorting that all out for me, and I will get it all when I come back. So, let's talk about yesterday. We talked about Emil and Henry. And if you remember, Henry was given a head start of 45 meters because he was the younger brother. So when we wrote his equation, we wrote distance equaled time plus 45. Because whatever his time was, we then added an additional 45 minutes to that because he got that head start. So you're going to see something very similar today with these two shirt companies. We're going to compare two shirt companies, Mighty T and No Shrink Tees. And you're going to see something very similar to what we did with Emil and Henry. So if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and get out your composition book. Okay, I'm going to give you some titles here. And also, open up your textbook to page 35. So while you're getting all that set up, I'm going to go ahead and write your titles up here on the board. We are on page 106. And the title here, I'm going to have to write really big, but you can write a little smaller. Comparing relationships. And then on 107, your title here is the page numbers we are working with in our textbook. So pages 32 through 35. All right. The title is also on the top of your notes. And the page numbers you can find in the book if you need more time. All right. Once you finish writing down those titles, make sure you get out your textbook. I'm actually going to start reading on 34. 32 and 33 is kind of a review of what we talked about yesterday with Henry and Emil. Plus, there's some vocab words, but you're actually going to do the vocab tomorrow. Today, we're just going to work on the notes. We're going to do parts A and B. And then tomorrow, I'm going to give you a little bit of extra notes and some time to write down those vocab words. All right, so let's go ahead and move on back to our notes. I'm going to get this out of the way. All right. So we have these two companies. So let's read at the big top of 34. Ms. Chang's class decides to give t-shirts to each student who participates in the walkathon. They receive bids for the cost of the t-shirts from two different companies. Mighty T charges $49 plus $1 per t-shirt. So what that means is there's a flat rate. So before I've even ordered any t-shirts from this company, I have to pay a $49 fee. But once I pay that $49 fee, each shirt is just $1. Okay, back to the reading. No Shrink Tee charges $4.50 per t-shirt. So they don't have a fee. They just say, hey, if you want to buy shirts from us, all the shirts are $4.50. So Ms. Chang writes the following equations on the board, and they start to talk about which company would be the best. Now, a lot like yesterday with Emil and Henry, at one point, they're going to have the same cost for the same amount of shirts, just like Henry and Emil had the same time at the same distance. That was their intersection. So we will find an intersection with these today. But you're going to notice that one of the companies is going to escalate higher and be more expensive, and one of the companies will continue to rise, but not at such a rapid speed. So when does that happen and how does that happen? That's what we're going to solve for today. You're also going to learn a few new vocabulary words today, and like I said, tomorrow you'll officially write them down, but today we'll just kind of discuss them. So if you look at part A on page 34, for number 1, it says, for each equation, explain what information the y-intercept and the coefficient of n represent. What is the independent variable? What is the dependent variable? So if you notice your notes here, I did set them up for you. I already gave you the equations here. C equals 49 plus N. And again, this 49 came from the $49 fee that you have to pay. Now, the reason this is just N is because each shirt is $1, and we don't need to put 1 N. We can just put N. Now, if the shirts were $2, then you would see 2N right here. Now, if you look over here at the other company, the equation is C, and I just put the names here just to separate them out a little bit. C equals 4.5N, and of course you could put 4.50, but typically when we're multiplying with decimals, we just get rid of that last zero. So this just means how many you need. It's going to multiply by 450 because all shirts are $4.50. So the y-intercept. The y-intercept is where it crossed that y line. So I'm just going to bring up my paper back just to kind of show you. If I were to, whoops, let me get my mouse. If I were to draw a graph real quick. All right, so you have your graph. This is your y-axis. So what I'm looking for is where did it cross this line? So let's say it crossed right here and the line is going something like that. All right, maybe there. This point right here is called your y-intercept. That's where it crossed the line or it collided into the line, that sort of thing. We did discuss this a little bit last week. Now, if it asks for the x-intercept, that's down here. That's where it crossed the x line. So the line would go through this way, and this is the point of collision. Okay? So y-intercept, x-intercept. All right. Let's go back to our notes. Now, where did the y-intercept go? Well, basically, this is where it started. I'm going to switch my colors here. This is where it starts. All right, so where did this Mighty Tea Company start? Well, it started with $49 because it was a $49 fee. But 49 is not an answer when we're talking about graphing. So it's actually 0.49. Now, what does that represent? It represents a payment. So before you order any shirts, you're already paying $49 for this company. Okay? Now a coefficient. Big word here, coefficient. All right, I'm going to underline this, or you can highlight it. Coefficient is the number in front of a variable. So I'm going to come back down here real quick to my scratch paper just to show you. All right, and just ignore the other writing there. A coefficient is a number. You could have 2y plus 4x. Both 2 and 4 are coefficients. It's any number in front of any variable. It doesn't have to be in a certain order. You can have, 5 or 6 of these lined up with different variables. It doesn't matter what the variable is. So if they ask you, what's the coefficient? On this one, you could say 2, 4, and 1, but not the 2 because the 2 is missing a variable after it. So when they ask for coefficient, you just list every number that happens to fall being multiplied by a variable. Okay. So let me go ahead and erase that real quick just so I can not lose everything by clearing the whole screen. All right. I'm going to go back to my notes now, so hopefully you have an idea what a coefficient is. So if you're looking at this equation, my coefficient in this case is actually a 1. And the reason it's a 1 is because that's an invisible 1 right there in front of that N. And that's because each shirt is $1. So our coefficient is 1. Now, dependent variable and an independent variable. Notice it's saying variable. They don't want a number here. They want a letter. So what is dependent? What is depending on something happening? Remember, dependent also means there's some math involved to get the answer. So the only letter up here, C or N, that requires some math to get the answer is C. So that's my dependent variable. The cost will constantly change depending on how many shirts I purchase. Now, the independent variable is a number that they give to us, or it's given. I didn't have to do any math to actually find the answer. So in this case, it's the N. And the reason it's an N is you could say, oh, I need 10 shirts. Well, because you need 10, you didn't have to do any math to get 10. You need 10. So that's an independent variable. It stands on its own. Nothing will change that number unless you have more students, and then your number would be 20 instead of 10. But the independent variable is the one that doesn't change without doing doing any kind of math. Okay? So now let's look at the no shrink T. The y-intercept, again, this is where it starts. Well, this one starts, well, if I buy 0 shirts from this company, how much am I going to pay? $0. So this one's going to start at 0, 0. So if you're thinking of yesterday with Emil and Henry, this is Henry, and this is Emil. Henry got the head start, Emil did not. All right, so this time we're just talking money instead of a race. What is my coefficient? Well, remember, a coefficient is any number that's in front of a variable. So there's no numbers here. Oh, there is a number there. So my coefficient is 4.5. That's it. Again, my dependent variable requires some math to get the answer, so that's going to be C. And my independent variable is given to me. That's going to be N. All right, so to answer questions, this was A1. So we answered A1. This one here is A2, and I broke up A2 into 2 sections just to make it a little bit more organized. And then down here will be A3. All right, so if you're following along in your book, you can kind of see these questions broken down for you. So A2 says, for each company, what is the cost of 12 t-shirts and what is the cost for 20 t-shirts? So you'll see I have the 12 here and the 20 here. All right, so let's go ahead and start with the 12. The best thing to do is write down the equation. So we have C equals 49 plus N for mighty T. And the N I'm going to swap out for 12. So this becomes 49 plus 12. I'll give you a second to add that up. All right, 49 plus 12, you should have 61. If you didn't get 61, check your math. All right, let's do no shrink. So we have C equals 4.5 times N. So again, my N is 12 this time. So I'm going to say 4.5 times 12. Give you a second to check that on your calculator. All right, 4.5 times 12 gives you 54. So this shows you if you only needed 12 shirts, obviously this is your cheaper company. That's the company you want to go with because it's only going to cost you $54. So you're saving a few dollars with going with this company, and that's because Mighty T has that $49 fee. Well, if you remember from Emil and Henry, at some point one of these companies is going to escalate a lot higher. It's going to have a much steeper line when we graph it. So let's see if I upped the ante and made it 20 t-shirts. Would no shrink still be cheaper than Mighty T? So let's check it out. All right. So let's write the equation again. We have C equals 49 plus N. And now this time I'm going to say 49 plus 20. When I add those together, go ahead and do that on your calculators. All right, you should get $69. Okay, let's try no shrink. So we have C equals 4.5 N. So we're going to say 4.5 times 20. All right, try that on your calculators real quick. All right, and when you multiply 4.5 times 20, you should get 90. Holy cow, that's a lot more money. I mean, just look at the difference here. of adding a few shirts, we went from $54 to $90 just by adding a couple shirts. And then over here, you only went up $8. So obviously now this one is the cheaper company to go with. So once you pass a certain point, you'll see that one of the companies will outnumber the other. Okay, now for A3. A3 is asking us, Lonnie calculates that the school has about $120 to spend on t-shirts. From which company will 120 buy the most t-shirts? Explain your answer. So this time, it doesn't matter how many kids are in the club. I only have $120. So I definitely need to find the cheaper bargain here. So let's write the equation for both again. So we have C equals 49 plus N. And this time, since we're talking about cost, well, that's where we're going to switch out the C, for 120 there. Because we're talking about the cost, so we're going to swap out the two costs. So this time I'm going to put 120 down here equals 49 plus N. Now this is asking us 49 plus what would give me 120. So if that doesn't come to you right away, just subtract 49 from both sides. And the 49s cancel. And 120 minus 49, I'll give you a second to do the math on that. All right, 120 minus 49, you should have 71 shirts. So if I go with Mighty T, I can afford 71 shirts, which is quite a bit for a club. All right, now let's try the next company. Again, we have C equals 4.5 N. We're swapping out the cost. So I'm going to say 120 equals 4.5 N. Now remember, when a number is slapped up against a variable, that means to multiply. So this is saying 4.5 times what will give me 120. Well, in case you don't know right off the bat, we're going to divide. We're going to divide by 4.5. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. The 4.5s cancel. And on your calculators, do 120 divided by 4.5. All right, if you divided that, you should have got 26. 26 t-shirts you can purchase with no shrink for $120. That's a huge difference. So obviously this is our winning company here. So if you notice, as the amount of t-shirts increases, this company here, Mighty T, actually gets cheaper. The number of t-shirts that increase over here, the price goes up and gets a lot more expensive. Okay, so at some point they collided and we'll have to figure that out. All right, let's move on to part B. That's on page 35. Well, actually, no. This is A4. I thought it was part B. This is A4. I apologize. A4. Down here will be A5. And I broke up A5 into two parts. All right, so let's talk about A4. A4 says, for what number of t-shirts is the cost of the two companies equal? Again, when did they collide? When did they have their intersection? Same price for the same amount of shirts. So we're going to find that out. And what is the cost? And explain how you found your answers. So the best thing to do is to make two tables. Okay? So the first thing we need to do is write down what we're looking for. So we have the same cost when you buy how many shirts, and this is what we're solving for how much money. All right, so same amount of shirts, Same amount of money. So I'm going to make an XY table. This will be for Mighty T. So I'm going to put MT. Here's X and Y. And over here is going to be no shrink. So I'm going to put NS. And here's X and Y. All right, so since we already know that anything less than 12, because we did it over here, 12, we had no shrink was cheaper. But you'll notice we're not even close in price here. We're a little bit close. We're a lot closer than 20. So you don't need to start your table off at 0. Since we have a 12 and a 20, let's kind of start in there. So I'm going to start one less than 12. We're going to count by 2s. We're going to go 10 here, 12, 14, 16, 18. Now, if I'm going to do that to one company, I need to do the same amount to the other company, just so we can see. So 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Now, if we don't get a match on the Y column, then we can look at the odd numbers. Counting by 2s typically works pretty well. But again, if you don't get a match, try putting in 11 and 13 and 15 and see if that gives you a match. All right, so for Mighty T, remember Mighty T, we're going to add 49. So 10 plus 49, this is going to be $59. We already found 12. It's over here. That's 61. 14 plus 49, we get 63. 16 plus 49, we get 65. And the last one, 18, we get 67. All right, now let's look at no shrink. For 10, we're going to multiply 4.5 times the 10, and we get $45. We already found the cost of 12. It's right here, which is 54. 14 is going to cost us $63. 16 is going to cost us $72. And I'll let you find number 18. Do you see where both tables have the same X and the same Y? Do you see where they are equal? Since that's what we're, oops, I covered it up. That's what we're looking for, is when they are equal.